All right, Algebra 1B. Welcome to part 2 of lesson 7-3. We're going to start here with a couple warm-up problems to introduce the concept that we're going to cover in this video. So here, I'm asking you to simplify the following two expressions. Pause the video, take a minute, try to simplify these as far as you possibly can, and then come back and we'll talk about how we simplify these expressions. All right, so pause the video, take a look, give yourself a couple minutes, then come back and we'll talk about it. Okay, number 1 says 4x times 4x. Okay, 4x times 4x. Hopefully we understand that in this 4x really is just saying 4 times x, 4 times x times 4 times x. So we've got 4 things here that are all being multiplied together. So we know that we can switch the order around however we want of the things that we are multiplying and not change the answer at all. So instead of saying 4 times x times 4 times x, I can say 4 times 4 times x times x. Okay? So 4 times 4 times x times x. Hopefully we know 4 times 4 is 16, and hopefully we know x times x is x squared. So 4x times 4x is 4 times 4 times x, which is 16x to the second power. All right? In the same way, in number 2, we see 3 times y times x times 3 times y times x. So here, we have 6 things that are all being multiplied together. And again, I can switch the order up however I want to without changing the answer, because this is all being multiplied together. Okay? So I can change this to be 3 times x times y times y. Right, I still have 2 3's, 2 x's, and 2 y's. I've just changed the order. Now, hopefully we know that 3 times 3 gives us 9. And hopefully we know that x times x gives us x squared, and y times y gives us y squared. All right? So there's what we have now. 3 times y times x times 3 times y times x is the same as 9x squared y squared. Okay? So here we're just practicing switching up the order as much as we can and as much as we want to put together the things that we know how to multiply together, like numbers or x's or y's. Okay? Once you feel good about those 2 warm-up problems, join me please on the bottom of page 434, and we're going to learn a new rule about exponents. All right, here we go. So on page 434, you will find this little expression here, or that little paragraph. Okay? It tells us that we can use repeated multiplication to simplify an expression like 4m to the 1/2 power, or 4 times m to the 1/2 power, all of that raised to the 3rd power. All right? So we're going to look at what that looks like right here. And this should start looking a lot like the warm-up problems that we just did. Okay? We know that 4 times m to the 1/2, all of that to the 3rd power, is just like listing out the thing in the parentheses 3 times. 1, 2, 3 times. 3 times. Okay? So we've got 3 of these things, and we can see that it's 4 times m to the 1/2 times 4 times m to the 1/2 times 4 times m to the 1/2. All of those things are being multiplied together. Again, there are 6 of them total. And again, just like in our warm-up, I can move these around wherever I want, to whatever order I want, so that I can simplify things down very nicely. So I'm going to change this to say 4 times 4 times 4 times m to the 1/2 times m to the 1/2 times m to the 1/2. Okay, so I'm right here in this line. So that line, I've just reordered and put the 3 4's together in the front and the m to the 1/2 in the second half. Right? So 4 times 4 times 4, we know that we can rewrite that as 4 to the third power because there were 3 of them all multiplied together. Now, when it comes to the m to the 1/2, notice please that we are taking m, the same base every time, with some exponent and multiplying them together, which allows us to add the exponents up. So it's m to the 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2. Okay? And 1/2 plus another half plus another half gives me here 3/2. So I have m to the 3/2. Okay? 4 to the third power is 64, m to the 3/2. That's not what I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with that right there. The fact that you can notice that when we do 4 times m to the 1/2, all of that to the third power, notice that we can change it to say 4 to the third power, and then hopefully we know that m to the 1/2 to the third power is equal to m to the 3/2 power. That uses our rule from yesterday, that when we raise a power to a power, we just multiply. 1/2 times 3 gives us 3/2. Okay? So really, what we did here is instead of doing 4 times m to the 1/2, all of that to the third, we just get to do each piece, the 4 and the m to the 1/2, each of those to the third power. Okay? That is summarized in your property or your rule at the top of page 435. So when you're comfortable with that example, go there with me, please. And here's our rule. It says, in words, to raise a product to a power. That just means two things multiplied together. Okay, that's what this means. 2 or 3 or however many things you want, all multiplied together. Raise each factor or each piece. Raise each piece to the power and then multiply them together. Okay? So a times b to the n, two things multiplied together and then raised to the n power, is the same thing as a to the n power times b to the n power. Okay? So here's a couple examples for you. I like this one a lot. Very simple example that you can look at and understand. 3 times x, all of that to the fourth. They just put the 4 in the exponent with the 3 and the x separately, and are now saying 3 to the fourth times x to the fourth, which then you can simplify down much easier, 81x to the fourth. Okay? Let's look at a couple examples of the way I'm going to make you do this in your practice problem set. Okay? So once you have added this to your notes, take note please, then we'll look at these two examples. First example is right here. What is the simplified form of 5x to the third, all of that raised to the second power? Okay. So here's what I see. I see 5x to the third raised to the second power. And I know that this is really 5 times x to the third, right? All of that to the second power. So now I'm just going to take each piece, the 5 and the x to the third, and raise each one to the second power. Okay? That's what we see on the other side of our equal sign. 5 times x to the third, all of that to the second power, is the same thing as 5 to the second power times x to the third to the second power. Okay? Now hopefully we remember from yesterday that when we do x to the third to the second power, we multiply those exponents, okay? And we get x to the sixth power. 3 times 2 is 6. Hopefully we also know that 5 squared is 25, so our final answer right here is 25x to the sixth. Right? And we're done. I want you to take a look, please, at these 3 example problems, which you can find in the Got It, number 3, in the middle of page 435. Take a look there. Try to simplify each of those expressions. And please take note of the negative exponents. Okay? Here we have a negative 4 exponent right there, which means this stuff is all going to end up on the bottom of a fraction somehow. Same thing over here with the negative 2 exponent. Okay? So take a look at A, B, and see if you have time. When you're a master of those 3 example problems, then flip to the next slide with me. we're going to look then at problem 4, how this is all going to come together. So pause the video, take a look at least 2 of those 3 got it questions, right here, and then come with me towards problem 4. All right. We're going to pull it all together now and talk about how to simplify these crazy looking expressions like we see right there. All right, n to the 1/2 power to the 10th power times 4 times m times n to the negative 2/3 power, all of that to the 3rd power. All right, we're going to go through this together slowly, step by step, and I'm going to make you do a couple of them, and then you will be all ready to go and prepared for your practice problem set. Okay. Just a reminder that when we're doing this, really what we're trying to do is become problem solvers and see, I have a big mess of stuff. How can I make it look a little bit better, a little bit easier for myself, okay? That's our goal here. It's not about the letters and the numbers, but it's about that skill of being able to problem solve and make something look a lot simpler for yourself, okay? The first thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to rewrite what we have there. Okay, that's what we have. The first thing I see on the far left is n to the 1/2 to the 10th power. Right? So I know that when I raise a power to a power, I get to multiply the powers. So I'm going to multiply these 2 numbers right here, 1/2 and 10. I know that 1/2 times 10 gives me 5. So I'm going to rewrite this as n to the 5th power. And then I still have times this whole mess, 4 times m times n to the negative 2/3, all of that to the 3rd power. Okay, that's what I'm going to deal with now. We can see that we have 3 different pieces inside of that parentheses, all raised up to the 3rd power. So our rule for today says I can take that 3rd power and just change it over to every one of my pieces individually. So that's what I'm going to do first. I still have my n to the 5th. Now in my parentheses, I'm going to have 4 to the 3rd power times m to the 3rd power times n to the negative 2/3 power, that whole guy to the 3rd power. Okay? I promise this is going to look a lot simpler in a minute. But for right now, that's what I have. And I'm going to try to deal with all this stuff in blue to make it very, very simple so I can combine it and be done. Okay? 4 to the 3rd power, if you put that in on your calculator, you would find that that is 64. All right? And because this is all still multiplication, I can move the order around anywhere I want to. So I'm going to put that 4 to the 3rd power out front, which I know this equals 64. So I'm going to say 64 out front. Now I just have m to the 3rd here. I can't do anything else with that. So I'm just going to put m to the 3rd here. So now I've used this piece right there and this piece right there. My other 2 pieces I still have to deal with a little bit. Okay. So now what I have is 64, which came from there, m to the 3rd, which came from there. And now I've still got this n to the 5th power times, my other piece also has an n in it, but I'm taking n to the negative 2/3 and raising that up to the 3rd power. Okay, so I know when I raise a power to a power, I get to multiply the exponents. Negative 2/3 times 3, the 3's end up actually canceling out, and this just becomes n to the negative 2 power. Okay? So now that's the last thing that I need to simplify, and I will be all done simplifying this problem. Okay? The only issue that I still see is that I have 2 different n expressions now, right here and right here. But I know when I'm multiplying n to some power a couple different times, I get to take this exponent and add it to this exponent. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so this final answer equals 64 still up front, m to the 3rd times n, and 5 plus negative 2 actually ends up at n to the third as well. Okay, so there it is. There's my final, fully simplified form, which certainly looks much better than this form. All right, 64 n to the third, n to the third. All right. If you need to go back and re-watch that again, please do. Then when you're ready, take a look at these two practice problems down here, simplifying all these crazy different pieces. Okay? Make sure that you're putting together in the end what letters are the same. In this case, the x's can get combined in the end. So I'll put that here. Little hint for you. Combine x's at the end. And here we can combine c's at the end. Okay? So take a look at these two practice problems. When you have mastered those two practice problems, you will be prepared to work on your practice problem set in class tomorrow. If you have questions about anything that I've done, especially in this last example, because I know it was a lot of steps and a lot of crazy things that I was doing. So if you have questions, please make a note to ask me in class tomorrow. That's all for now. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Take a look at A and B, and you will be ready to go.